When silence answered, the silence of space had never felt so final. Commander Alara Voss stared at the communications array, its soft blue light casting shadows across her gaunt face. She'd been sending distress calls for weeks now, watching as her homeworld Veracia burned under the relentless assault of the Korath Imperium. Once a vibrant civilization spanning 5 lush worlds, the Veraci were now reduced to a handful of survivors hiding in the abandoned mining tunnels beneath their capital city. "Any response?" asked Taran, her second in command. His crystalline skin had lost its luster, now dull and cracked from stress and malnutrition. Alara shook her head. "Nothing. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. They claim they can't risk provoking the Korath into attacking their core systems." Taran slammed his fist against the wall, leaving a small fracture in the stone. "Cowards. They promised protection when we joined their alliance. What good are treaties if they crumble at the first sign of danger?" "Save your strength," Alara said softly. "We'll need it for the evacuation tonight." But they both knew the truth. There was nowhere left to evacuate to. The Korath Imperium didn't just conquer, they consumed. They stripped planets of all resources, turning thriving ecosystems into barren wastelands. Their massive harvester ships were visible even now through the small observation port, hovering like dark stars above the once beautiful skyline of Verac Prime. The Veraci had always been peaceful, focusing on art, science, and exploration rather than warfare. Their defense systems were designed for deterrence, not prolonged conflict. When the Korath arrived 6 months ago, they had expected aid from their allies, the diplomatic Solorians, the technologically advanced Breek Collective, or the warrior Talmari. But one by one, they had all declined to intervene. "Commander," called Ranil, their communications specialist, "I've expanded our broadcast to include obsolete frequencies and unmonitored channels. It's a waste of power, but—" "Do it," Alara interrupted. "We have nothing to lose." She returned to the central chamber where the remaining 342 Veraci had gathered. Children clung to parents, elders huddled together, and the few militia members stood vigilant at the entrances. They had enough supplies for perhaps another week. Alara climbed onto a fallen pillar to address them. "My people," she began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Tonight we will move deeper into the old mining network. The Korath sensors cannot penetrate the mineral deposits there. It will buy us time." "Time for what?" called out an elder. "To die slowly instead of quickly?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable and heavy. That night, as they prepared to move, the ground above them shook violently. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as the Korath began their final assault on the capital. "They're bombing the evacuation centers," reported Taran, rushing in with a tactical display. "They know we're underground somewhere." "Accelerate the move," ordered Alara. "We leave in 10 minutes, not an hour." As they hurriedly gathered their meager belongings, an unusual sound echoed through the tunnels. Not the rhythmic thudding of Korath bombs, but an erratic, thunderous roar that seemed to split the very air. "What is that?" whispered Ranil, eyes wide. The answer came moments later as a portion of the tunnel wall exploded inward. Veraci scattered, militia raising their weapons at the cloud of dust and debris. Through it emerged not the dreaded armored forms of Korath soldiers, but something else entirely. They were bipedal, like the Veraci, but stockier, covered in mismatched armor that looked salvaged from a dozen different sources. Their faces were flat, with small eyes and protruding noses, and completely unfamiliar. "Who are you?" demanded Alara, her hand on her sidearm. The foremost figure removed a helmet revealing short-cropped hair and skin the color of pale sand. "Captain Marcus Chen, Earth Expeditionary Force." The being spoke in accented but understandable Galactic standard. "We picked up your distress call. Figured you could use a hand." Alara blinked in confusion. "Earth? I don't know of any Galactic Council member by that name." The human let out a short, harsh laugh. "Yeah, we're not part of their club, got rejected for being too unpredictable and culturally unstable, whatever that means." More of the strange beings poured through the opening, carrying weapons unlike any Alara had seen, crude by Galactic standards but substantial. They moved with a confident precision that spoke of experience. "How did you get past the Korath blockade?" asked Terran suspiciously. Another human stepped forward, this one with darker skin and hair tied back tightly. "We didn't go through it. We went around it, dropped out of FTL behind Varasia's third moon and came in low, under their sensor grid." "That's impossible," said Ranil. "The gravitational stresses would tear a ship apart." The first human, Chen, grinned. "Not if you don't mind a few dents and know how to reinforce your inertial dampeners. Look, we can discuss flight mechanics later. Right now you've got about 30 minutes before the Korath pin down our entry point." Alara studied these strange newcomers carefully. There was something unsettling about them, a controlled intensity that reminded her of predators she'd encountered on frontier worlds. "Why would you help us?" she asked finally. "What do you want in return?" "The Korath hit one of our colony ships last year," said Chen, his expression darkening. "Said it was a navigational error. 3,000 people, families, children." He checked a device on his wrist. 28 minutes now. Terran moved closer to Alara. "Commander, we don't know anything about these humans. They could be mercenaries, slavers. We're neither," interrupted the female human. "I'm Lieutenant Amara Santos. We're soldiers, yes, but we're here because no one should face extinction alone. The Galactic Council ignored our warnings about the Korath years ago. They're doing the same to you now." Alara made her decision. "What do you propose, Captain Chen?" "Simple. We get your people to safety. Then we make the Korath regret ever coming to this system." "With all due respect," said Ranil, gesturing to the 30 or so humans who had entered, "how can you possibly stand against the Korath fleet? They have dreadnoughts, harvester ships, thousands of troops." Chen exchanged glances with Santos, and both humans smiled in a way that sent chills down Alara's spine. "We brought friends," said Chen, "and we fight differently than what you're used to." As if on cue, the ground shook again, but this time followed by distant explosions that didn't match the Korath bombing pattern. Santos raised a communication device. "Diversion team reports multiple Korath anti-air batteries engaged. Their fleet is scrambling interceptors." "Time to move," Chen announced, then turned to Alara. "Commander, if you want your people to survive, come with us now. Faced with extinction, or trusting these strange beings from an unknown world, Alara made the only choice possible. "Lead the way, Captain." The evacuation happened with surprising efficiency. The humans had drilled tunnels connecting to a hidden valley where 4 transport ships waited, their design unlike anything in the Galactic Registry, angular, utilitarian, and bristling with weapons that looked more mechanical than energy-based. As the Varasi boarded, Alara watched a squad of humans setting up defensive positions with practiced ease. They didn't move like the ceremonial guards of the Galactic Council, or even the professional soldiers of the Talmari. They moved like beings who had been fighting their entire lives. "Your people," she said to Chen as they oversaw the loading. "They're warriors." Chen checked his weapon. A projectile launcher of some kind. "On Earth, Commander, peace has always been the exception, not the rule. We've fought each other for millennia. Now we're better at fighting together. Against the Korath. Against anyone who threatens us." He paused. "Or those we choose to protect." As the last transport filled, a human scout rushed up. "Captain, Korath ground forces inbound, 6 minutes." Chen nodded and turned to Alara. "Time for you to go." "What about you and your soldiers?" "We'll hold them off. Make sure you get clear." Before she could protest, he added, "Don't worry. We're pretty hard to kill." Alara boarded the final transport reluctantly. Through the viewport, she watched the humans take positions among the rocks, setting up what appeared to be primitive explosives and cover points. As the transport lifted off, breaking through Varasia's atmosphere, she saw flashes of light below where the human defenders engaged the Korath forces. Against all expectations, they weren't retreating. They were advancing. In the darkness of space, Alara was stunned to see more human ships, dozens of them, attacking the Korath fleet with a ferocity that seemed impossible. They didn't maintain formation like galactic fleets. They swarmed like insects, targeting engines, Weapons, communication arrays with precision, strikes before darting away. They fight like nothing I've ever seen, whispered Terran beside her. No, Ilara replied, watching as a human ship deliberately rammed a Korath cruiser, detonating some kind of explosive that tore both vessels apart. They fight like everything has already been lost. As their transport jumped to FTL, heading for a human outpost at the edge of the system, Ilara wondered what kind of species could produce warriors willing to die so readily for strangers, and what it would mean for the galaxy now that humanity had finally revealed itself. The fire of Earth. 3 days into their temporary refuge at Outpost Horizon, Ilara still couldn't comprehend the humans. The outpost itself defied conventional design, a sprawling complex built into an asteroid, reinforced not with elegant force fields but with layers of metal, stone, and what Captain Chen called good old-fashioned concrete. It was ugly, functional, and virtually invisible to standard scanners. Inside, human culture was equally perplexing. They argued constantly, their chain of command seemingly fluid yet never breaking. They celebrated survival with fervor, sharing stories and a burning liquid they called whiskey. They mourned their dead with quiet intensity, adding names to a wall covered in hundreds of others. 13, Chen told her on the 4th morning, his eyes rimmed red from either grief or lack of sleep. We lost 13 holding that valley so your people could escape. Ilara bowed her head. They will be remembered in Varazzi songs for generations. They'd prefer you remember them by fighting back, Chen replied. He unfolded a tactical display, showing the Varacia system. The Korath have established processing centers on your southern continent. They're stripping resources at an accelerated rate. How do you know this? Asked Terran, who had joined them. Lieutenant Santos entered, tossing a small device onto the table. Because we put eyes and ears everywhere before we pulled out. Old-school surveillance. They're scanning for energy signatures and complex tech, not passive receivers and chemical cameras. Ilara studied the display. They think we've fled the system entirely, which gives us an advantage, said Chen. They've redirected most of their fleet to pursue a ghost signal we planted near the Dolmar Nebula. What remains is their command, vessel and a skeleton defensive force. You're suggesting we attack? Ilara couldn't hide her disbelief. Even with reduced numbers, their technology far exceeds anything we possess. Santos smiled thinly. Technology isn't everything, Commander. Over the next several hours, Chen outlined a plan so audacious it bordered on insanity. The humans proposed infiltrating the Korath command ship, not to destroy it but to seize control of it. Impossible, declared Raniel after reviewing the specifications. Their biometric security requires Korath DNA and neural patterns. No one has ever successfully infiltrated their command systems. No one's tried our way, countered Santos, revealing a container of dark, viscous fluid. This contains synthesized Korath DNA markers. We've been developing it since our first encounter with them. It won't fool their systems for long, but it doesn't need to. And once we're inside? Asked Ilara. Chen's expression hardened. We introduced the Korath to a very old human concept, the Trojan horse. The plan required precision timing and coordination unlike anything the Varazzi had attempted. Human engineers worked alongside Varazzi scientists, modifying equipment and training for the insertion. What amazed Ilara most was the humans' adaptability. They incorporated Varazzi suggestions without ego, refined approaches based on new information, and never once doubted the mission would succeed. Your confidence borders on madness, she told Chen as they prepared the infiltration shuttle. Madness has its advantages, he replied. The truly sane wouldn't attempt this. The Korath know that, which is why their security has blind spots. They plan for rational opponents. The strike team consisted of 7 humans and 3 Varazzi, including Ilara. She had insisted on joining despite Chen's objections. My people, my fight, she had told him, and eventually he conceded with surprising respect. They launched under cover of a meteor shower, natural phenomenon the humans had calculated to provide optimal sensor interference. The infiltration shuttle, itself, disguised as a piece of debris, drifted toward the massive Korath command ship. "Approaching docking port 6, reported Santos from the pilot seat. "Initiating DNA spray on outer hull. Now." The shuttle released a cloud of the synthesized DNA markers, contaminating the area around an emergency airlock designed for repair, cruise. Sensors would detect only Korath biological signatures. "Remember," Chen told the team as they prepared for breach, 20 minutes max before their security system runs a full spectrum analysis and detects the synthetic markers. We move fast, we stay together, we plant the package, we extract. The package was a data core containing what the humans called a virus, an infiltration program designed to corrupt the Korath command protocols and transmit their tactical database to the human fleet, hiding in the outer system. They breached the airlock without incident, the Korath security systems recognizing the DNA markers and permitting entry. Inside, the architecture was as coldly efficient as Alara remembered from intelligence briefings. Angular corridors lit with harsh blue light, air heavy with chemical purifiers. Chen held up a hand, stopping the team as a patrol of 3 Korath soldiers approached. Unlike the Virazzi or humans, the Korath moved with mechanical precision, their exoskeletal armor clicking faintly against the metal floor. Their elongated heads housed 4 eyes positioned for maximum visual coverage, and their upper limbs ended in 3-fingered hands currently gripping pulse rifles. The team pressed into a maintenance alcove, waiting as the patrol passed within, meters of their position. Ilara held her breath, noticing how the humans' hands never strayed far from their weapons. Unlike Galactic Council forces who prioritized non-lethal approaches, these humans seemed prepared, eager even to engage. Once clear, they proceeded deeper into the ship, following Santos's navigational guidance toward the central processing hub. They encountered 2 more patrols, avoiding detection through timing and the judicious use of sensor jamming devices the humans called scramblers. 5 minutes to security reset, whispered Santos as they reached the processing hub, a cavernous chamber filled with data pillars connecting to a central core. Chen nodded to the team's tech specialist, a wiry human named Park. "Do it." Park approached the nearest data terminal, attaching the virus package and activating it with a series of commands. "Initiating now. 3 minutes until complete integration." "Too long," muttered Chen, eyeing the entrances. "Ilara, Santos, watch the east corridor. Ranil with me on the west." They took positions, weapons ready. For a moment, Ilara thought they might actually succeed without confrontation. Then alarms blared. "They've detected the synthetic markers early," called Park. 2 minutes to completion." The first wave of Korath security forces poured through the east corridor, 6 soldiers in formation firing immediately. Santos responded with practiced efficiency, her projectile weapon roaring in the enclosed space. The primitive technology shocked Ilara. While the Galactic Council used energy weapons that cauterized wounds, the human weapons tore through Korath armor, splattering green fluid across the walls. "West corridor clear," reported Chen, but the sound of approaching reinforcements echoed down the hallway. 1 minute. Park worked frantically at the terminal. 62%, 70%. More Korath flooded the chamber from multiple entrances. The team formed a defensive circle around Park, returning fire with coordinated precision. Ranil fell, clutching a wound in his shoulder. A human named Cooper dropped next, a Korath energy pulse burning through his chest. 85%, called Park above the din of combat. Chen tossed a cylindrical device into the largest concentration of Korath soldiers. It detonated with a flash and concussive force that shattered their exoskeletons and sent fragments flying across the chamber. "Complete!" shouted Park. "Virus deployed!" The effect was immediate and startling. Throughout the ship, systems began shutting down, lights flickering, doors sealing randomly, defensive protocols activating against phantom threats. The Korath command structure, dependent on their central AI, fell into chaos. "Extraction," ordered Chen, helping Ranil to his feet while Santos covered their retreat. They fought their way back through corridors now filled with disoriented Korath soldiers, responding to contradictory orders. The humans moved with a battle synchronicity that Alara had never witnessed, covering each other, communicating with hand signals, conserving ammunition with precise shots. As they reached the extraction point, a final Korath patrol blocked their path. Their commander, distinguished by elaborate markings on his armor, stepped forward. "Primitives," he hissed in broken galactic standard. "You cannot comprehend the forces you challenge." Chen didn't bother responding. He simply fired, his shot catching the commander between his upper eyes. As the body fell, he turned to Alara. "Never talk to the enemy when you can shoot them instead." They reached the shuttle as the command ship's systems began a complete collapse. Park had programmed the virus not only to extract data, but to initiate a catastrophic failure in the Korath power core. As they disengaged from the airlock, the massive vessel began to break apart from within, secondary explosions cascading along its length. In the aftermath, as they rendezvoused with the human fleet, Alara watched the tactical display show Korath, ships across the system responding to the loss of their command center, some retreating, others fighting amongst themselves as conflicting emergency protocols activated. "What happens now?" she asked Chen as they stood on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel named Resilience. "Now we take back your worlds," he said simply. "The Korath are vulnerable without their central command structure. We've distributed their tactical data to all our ships. We know their codes, their protocols, their weaknesses." "And after that?" Chen looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "After that, Commander Voss, we'd like to propose an alliance, not with the Galactic Council, they've proven themselves useless, but between the Varazzi and Earth. What would humanity gain from such an alliance? We have little to offer now." "You have what we need most," said Chen. "A foothold in this part of the galaxy, and allies who understand loyalty isn't just a word in a treaty." Over the next 2 weeks, the combined human Varazzi forces liberated the Varazzi homeworld and its colonies. The human approach to warfare shocked even veteran Varazzi militia. They didn't seek to minimize damage or preserve infrastructure that could aid the enemy. They struck with overwhelming force at critical targets, accepted casualties as inevitable, and pressed advantages, ruthlessly. When the last Korath harvester fell from the skies of Virak Prime, the survivors emerged from hiding to find their world scarred but free. And standing among the ruins of the capital city were the warriors of Earth, bloodied, determined, and victorious against all odds. Word spread quickly through galactic channels. The supposedly primitive humans had succeeded where the combined might of the Council had failed. Diplomatic envoys from worlds that had rejected Earth's previous overtures now approached with offers of trade, technology, and alliance. Chen rejected them all. "They abandoned you when you needed them," he told Alara as they watched the reconstruction begin. "They'll do the same to us if the situation reverses. We remember our friends and our enemies, Commander. It's a human trait the galaxy will need to understand." As the sun set over the recovering world, Alara considered the implications of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. They were unpredictable, volatile, and seemingly fearless. Everything, the careful, measured Galactic Council feared. "The Council believes conflict can be managed through diplomacy and controlled engagement," she said. "Your people seem to embrace it." "Not embrace," corrected Chen. "Accept. There's a difference. We don't seek war, but we don't flinch from it either. Humanity learned long ago that sometimes fire is the only answer to darkness." In the following months, as word of the Varazzi liberation spread, other worlds under Korath oppression reached out, not to the Galactic Council, but to Earth. Humanity's warriors, once rejected and dismissed, became the last, best hope for those abandoned by a galaxy that had chosen comfortable lies over uncomfortable action. And on 1,000 worlds, when hope seemed lost, and the darkness of conquest loomed, people looked to the stars and whispered the same prayer, that when silence answered their calls for help, Earth would hear them anyway.